I found the laptop on a Saturday afternoon in early March. The kind of cold, gray afternoon where the garage smells like motor oil and forgotten ambitions. Rachel was at her book club, the same book club she'd attended every Saturday for 3 years, regular as church bells. I wasn't looking for anything. I was just a guy cleaning out his garage, trying to make room for a new workbench. That's the thing about discovering your life is a lie. It usually happens when you're doing something mundane. The HP laptop was wedged behind 3 boxes of Christmas decorations we'd accumulated over our 8-year marriage. The same laptop Rachel had declared dead in 2019. The motherboard's fried, she'd told me then, weirdly insistent when I offered to crack it open and take a look. Just throw it away, Nick. It's junk. But I hadn't thrown it away. I'd tossed it in the garage because some part of me, the part that spent 2 decades in cybersecurity, never throws away hardware without wiping it first. Call it professional habit. Call it paranoia. Call it whatever you want. 4 years later, I held that laptop in my hands and wondered why my wife had been so desperate for me to get rid of it. 20 minutes. That's all it took. The motherboard wasn't fried. The CMOS battery was dead. A $3 fix that any amateur could manage. I sat on an overturned bucket in my cold garage, watching Windows boot up, feeling like a man about to open a door he couldn't close again. Rachel's password. I knew it would work before I typed it. She used the same password for everything. Our anniversary date backward. 10 Warthorn, 2016. October 14th, 2016. The day we got married under an oak tree in her parents' backyard, both of us crying happy tears, promising forever. The login screen dissolved, and there was my wife's other life, laid out like a crime scene. A second Gmail account. Rachel Morgan Life. Morgan was her maiden name. The name she'd surrendered at the altar. A second Facebook account under Rachel Morgan. Single status. A profile picture I'd never seen. Her in a red dress that showed more skin than she'd shown me in years. Eyes smoky, lips parted, looking at the camera like she was inviting it to bed. 847 friends. I didn't recognize a single name. A Dropbox folder labeled Future Plans. And WhatsApp web, still logged in, displaying thousands of messages with someone named Derek. I sat in that garage for a long time. The cold seeped through my jeans, numbed my hands. I didn't feel it. I was reading message after message, email after email, watching 5 years of my marriage unravel like a sweater caught on a nail. His name was Derek Sullivan. 42. Divorced. Commercial real estate developer. They'd met at a professional women's networking event. The same event Rachel had come home from glowing, talking about making connections and expanding her horizons. She'd been expanding something, all right. Their routine was meticulous. Saturday book club was a standing reservation at the Marriott downtown. Wednesday, gym sessions were lunch dates at restaurants on the other side of the city. Her occasional work conferences were weekend getaways, Napa, Sedona, once even a cruise to the Bahamas. I dropped her at the airport myself, kissed her goodbye, told her to have fun with her colleagues. Derek had been waiting in the departure lounge. I scrolled through the Facebook messages, and that's when the cold started to feel different. Less like temperature, more like something spreading through my chest. She told him I was emotionally distant, that I was probably on the spectrum, that I was terrible in bed, that I was financially controlling. None of it was true. I'd spent 8 years trying to be the husband she deserved. I'd rubbed her feet after long days. I'd remembered every anniversary, every birthday, every small preference. I'd been generous to a fault. Our joint accounts prove that. I'd loved her with everything I had. And she'd been describing a monster to her boyfriend. A convenient fiction that justified everything she was doing. The Facebook friends list told another story. Derek's mother, his sister, his college buddies, his business partners. They all knew about Rachel. They already considered her Derek's girlfriend. Some of the comments on her photos called her soon-to-be Mrs. Sullivan. She was planning to marry him, and I was just the obstacle. The Dropbox folder was worse. Inside was a subfolder called Exit Strategy 2024. I opened it, and my stomach dropped into my shoes. Screenshots of our joint bank accounts, our investment portfolios, our mortgage statements. Everything was documented with the precision of an accountant preparing for trial. There was a spreadsheet. I stared at it for a full minute before I understood what I was looking at. She'd calculated her fair share of our marital assets. She'd researched the average divorce settlement in our state. She'd identified which of my business assets might be considered marital property. Draft emails to her mother. I know this will come as a shock, but I have to leave Nick. He's not the man you think he is. I've met someone who truly sees me. Apartment listings, all in the same upscale neighborhood across town. All close to Derek's address, which I found in another document. And then I found the life insurance query. $2 million. On my life. Dated 8 months ago. I read it 3 times because surely I was misunderstanding. Surely my wife, the woman sleeping next to me every night, the woman who kissed me goodbye every morning, wasn't researching how much money she could collect if I died. But there it was. Black letters on a white screen. A question asked and answered. The WhatsApp messages filled in the gaps I didn't want filled. Years of conversations. Intimate things I won't describe. Photos from vacations she'd taken with girlfriends. And in the backgrounds, consistently, a man's shadow, a man's arm, a man's face. Derek. Always Derek. But it was one conversation thread that made me set the laptop down and stare at the garage wall. Derek. Sometimes I think about how much easier everything would be if he just wasn't in the picture. Rachel. LOL, stop, Derek. I'm serious. Guys like that have accidents all the time. Work stress, heart attacks, whatever. Rachel. You're terrible, Derek. Just saying. The insurance wouldn't hurt either. Rachel. Stop it. You're making me laugh. She hadn't shut it down. She'd laughed. She'd added an emoji. She'd treated the idea of my death like a joke between lovers. I closed the laptop and sat in the silence of my garage. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't put my fist through the wall, even though some part of me wanted to. Instead, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Clarity. My wife wasn't who I thought she was. My marriage wasn't what I thought it was. And the woman I'd devoted 8 years of my life to had been counting down the days until she could leave me. Or worse. I'm a cybersecurity consultant. I solve problems for a living. I build systems, identify vulnerabilities, and neutralize threats. Rachel had just become a threat. I didn't sleep that night. I photographed every screen. I exported every email. I downloaded every document. I saved every message. By the time the sun started turning the garage windows gray, I had 3 backup drives and a cloud server full of evidence. Then I showered, drank a pot of coffee, and sat at the kitchen table with a pleasant expression on my face. Rachel came down at 9, yawning, hair messy, wearing my old college t-shirt. The picture of innocence. Morning, handsome, she kissed my cheek. You're up early. Couldn't sleep? Had some work stuff on my mind. I smiled at her. How was book club? Oh, you know, same drama. Linda's getting divorced again. We all saw it coming. She poured herself coffee, completely relaxed. What are you working on this weekend? Just cleaning out the garage. Finally making room for that workbench. Oh, good. That place is a disaster. She sat across from me, scrolling through her phone, probably checking messages from Derek. Hey, you want to go to dinner tonight? That new Italian place finally has reservations available. Sounds perfect, I said. She smiled at me, that warm, familiar smile I'd loved for nearly a decade. And for the first time, I saw it for what it was, a performance. I smiled back. Two actors on a stage playing parts neither of us believed anymore. The next 2 weeks were the strangest of my life. I became the perfect husband, more attentive, more present, more loving. I brought Rachel flowers on a random Tuesday. I suggested weekend trips. I complimented her outfit every morning. She was confused, but pleased. "You seem different lately," she said one night, curled up next to me on the couch. "I'm just appreciating what I have," I told her, kissing her forehead. "Sometimes you need a reminder of how good things are." She smiled and snuggled closer. I watched the television without seeing it, running calculations in my head. During the day, while she was at her fake consulting job, I was building my case. My divorce attorney was named Sandra Patton. No, wait. Sandra McCarthy. A sharp woman in her 50s who'd seen every trick in the book and invented a few herself. Her office smelled like leather and old money, and she charged $500 an hour, worth every penny. "In this state," she explained during our first meeting, "proving adultery gives you significant advantages. At-fault divorce affects alimony calculations substantially. If you can document the affair, her financial misconduct, and especially this insurance application, you're looking at a very favorable outcome. And if I can prove she forged my signature on that application?" Sandra's eyes sharpened. "Then we're talking about criminal exposure. That's leverage she can't fight." I hired a private investigator, too. Frank Delgado, former FBI, now running his own firm out of a cramped office above a dry cleaner. He had gray hair, a gray mustache, and eyes that had seen things he'd never discuss. 5 years? He whistled when I showed him the documentation. "That's not an affair. That's a parallel life. I want everything. Photos, schedules, witnesses. Make it bulletproof." Frank leaned back in his chair, studying me with those FBI eyes. "Most guys in your position, they're emotional wrecks. Crying, throwing things, making threats they'll regret." He paused. "You're not like that." "No. That's either a good sign or a very bad one." He tapped his pen against his desk. "I need to know which before I take your money. You planning something stupid?" I met his gaze evenly. "I'm planning something very smart. Legal, documented, devastating. I want my wife to understand exactly what she threw away, and I want it to happen in a courtroom with a judge who's seen every piece of evidence I can gather." Frank's mustache twitched, almost a smile. "That's the right answer. The other answer gets people in prison. I'm a cybersecurity consultant. I've spent 20 years identifying threats and neutralizing them. My wife is a threat. Derek Sullivan is a threat. I'm not going to neutralize them with violence. I'm going to neutralize them with information." Frank stood up and extended his hand. "Then let's get to work." The first week of surveillance was tedious. Rachel maintained her routines perfectly. Gym on Monday and Wednesday, work on Tuesday and Thursday, book club on Saturday. Frank documented her movements with the patience of a man who'd spent decades watching people lie. "Your wife's good," he told me on day 5. "Smooth transitions. Never looks nervous. Never checks over her shoulder. She's been doing this so long it's second nature." "What about Sullivan?" "He's more interesting. Flashy car, expensive suits, nice watch. But the building his office is in, second rate. His development sites, mostly empty lots with coming soon signs that have been there for years. And his apartment, rented, not owned. So the money is mostly show. The money is entirely show. I pulled some financial records, don't ask how, and this guy is leveraged beyond belief. He owes money to banks, to investors, to contractors. His developments aren't building anything. They're just moving money around." This was before Frank made the SEC connection, before we understood the full scope of Derek's fraud. But even then, The picture was becoming clear. Rachel wasn't leaving me for a better life. She was leaving me for a man who was better at pretending. During week 2, I started testing Rachel's stories. "Hey," I said one evening, "I was thinking about that conference you went to in Napa last year. The one with your colleagues from the association. Wasn't there a great restaurant you told me about? What was it called?" Rachel looked up from her phone, slightly startled. Which restaurant? You said there was this amazing Italian place. You had the best pasta of your life." I watched her eyes flick left and up, the tell that meant she was accessing memory, not invention. "Oh, right. Trattoria. Something. I can't remember the name." "Funny, I looked up restaurants near your hotel and there's no Italian place within walking distance." A beat too long. "We drove somewhere. One of my colleagues knew the area." "What colleague?" "Nick, why are you interrogating me about pasta?" She laughed, but it was strained. "It was months ago. I don't remember every detail." "Just curious. You seemed so excited about it when you got back." She went back to her phone, and I went back to my documentation. Another lie confirmed. Another brick in the wall. Frank's first report came in 10 days later. He called me from his car at 7 in the morning, his voice carrying the weight of something interesting. "You sitting down?" "I'm driving to work. What do you have?" "Your wife's boyfriend isn't what he seems." I heard papers shuffling. "Derek Sullivan. Big commercial real estate guy, right? Developments all over the metro area. Drives a Mercedes, wears custom suits, looks like money." "That's him." "Except he's not money. He's debt in an expensive wrapper." Frank paused. "I've got a contact at the SEC. Did some digging. Sullivan is under investigation for securities fraud. His developments are paper castles. Investors put money in. He uses new investments to pay old investors. The actual buildings never get built." I nearly rear-ended the car in front of me. "He's running a Ponzi scheme?" "Sophisticated version, but yeah. SEC's been watching him for 18 months. Word is, indictments are coming. Maybe 6 months out, maybe sooner. His assets are leveraged to the ceiling. When this collapses, and it will collapse, there won't be anything left." I pulled into a parking lot and sat there, engine idling, processing. Rachel wasn't leaving me for love. She was leaving me for what she thought was a richer man, a more successful man, a bigger future. Except Derek had been lying to her too. The irony was almost beautiful. My wife was betraying me for a con man who was also betraying her. They deserved each other in ways neither of them understood. But I wasn't done digging. One of my cybersecurity clients was in commercial real estate, a legitimate firm that had been in business for 3 generations. Over coffee with their CFO, I casually mentioned Derek Sullivan's name. The CFO laughed. Not politely, genuinely. "Sullivan? That guy's a house of cards. Everyone in the industry knows it. His developments don't make any sense if you look at the numbers. I give him 18 months before the whole thing implodes." "Why hasn't anyone said anything?" "Because he's good at making people believe. That's his talent. Not building, believing." The CFO shook his head. "I feel sorry for anyone who trusted him with real money." I thought about Rachel's exit strategy spreadsheet, about her calculations of our marital assets, about the life insurance policy. She was planning to leave me for a man who was about to lose everything, and she had no idea. Frank's investigation expanded. He tracked down Derek's history, a pattern that made my stomach turn. 3 serious relationships in the past decade. All married women. All told the same stories about their terrible husbands. All convinced to leave their marriages for a better future with Derek. And all 3 were now divorced, broke, and bitter. The first one had moved her savings into a joint investment that evaporated. The second had signed over assets that Derek used to cover his debts. The third had alienated her entire family defending a relationship that ended the moment her divorce was finalized. Derek didn't want love. He wanted resources. And when the resources ran out, so did he. One of the ex-girlfriends agreed to talk. Her name was Vanessa Cole, and she lived in a small apartment on the rough side of town, a long way from the suburban house she'd owned before Derek. We met at a coffee shop. She was 45, thin in a way that suggested stress rather than health, with eyes that had seen too much. "Thanks for meeting me," I said, sliding a cup of coffee across the table. She wrapped her hands around it but didn't drink. "Frank said you're married to Derek's new... whatever she is." "For now, not for long." Vanessa studied me. "You don't look broken. Most guys in your position are barely holding it together. I'm holding it together for a very specific purpose. Which is making sure Derek Sullivan doesn't walk away from this unscathed, and making sure my wife understands exactly what she's losing." A ghost of a smile crossed Vanessa's face. "You sound like me, 5 years ago, before I lost everything. Tell me." She sighed and leaned back. "I was married for 12 years. Good marriage, mostly. My husband Jeff worked in finance, traveled a lot. I got lonely." She shrugged. "It's the oldest story in the world. Derek showed up at a charity event, handsome and charming and very, very attentive. He made me feel seen in a way Jeff hadn't in years." "How long before you left your husband?" 2 years. Derek was patient. He never pushed. He just waited. Let me convince myself that leaving was my idea." She shook her head slowly. "Looking back, I can see how he did it. Small comments about Jeff's shortcomings, suggestions that I deserved better, comparisons where Derek always came out ahead." "And your husband never suspected?" "I thought he didn't. After the divorce, I found out he'd known for almost a year. He just didn't fight for me." Her voice cracked slightly. "I thought that proved he didn't love me. Now I think he was just tired of competing with a fantasy." "What happened after the divorce?" "Derek was wonderful for about 6 weeks." Vanessa's hands tightened around her coffee cup. "Then things changed. He needed money for a business deal, a temporary thing, he said, just until his funds cleared. I gave him $50,000 for my settlement. I kept my expression neutral, but inside I was running calculations. Let me guess, the funds never cleared. There were always more delays, more excuses. He needed more money for permits, for contractors, for investors who were getting nervous. By the time I realized what was happening, I'd given him almost $300,000. Your entire settlement. My settlement, my savings, the money I'd put aside for my kids' college." Vanessa's voice was flat now, emptied of emotion. When I finally confronted him, he turned cold, like a switch flipping. All that warmth, all that attention, gone. He told me I'd known what I was getting into. He told me I'd made my choices. He told me to stop being dramatic. And then he left. Changed his phone number, moved out of the apartment we'd gotten together, started seeing someone new within weeks. I found out later she was married too. Vanessa finally took a sip of her coffee. "I lost everything for a man who was never real. The version of Derek I fell in love with? He doesn't exist. He's just a character Derek plays until he's gotten what he wants." I let the silence settle before asking the question I needed answered. "Would you be willing to testify to all of this? In a divorce proceeding, or if it came to that, in a criminal trial?" Vanessa's eyes sharpened. "Criminal trial? Sullivan is under SEC investigation for securities fraud. His developments are Ponzi schemes. And my wife forged my signature on a $2 million life insurance policy." I paused. "I'm not just trying to protect my assets. I'm trying to make sure these two can't do this to anyone else." For a long moment, Vanessa didn't respond. Then she nodded slowly. "I'll testify," she said. I'll tell anyone who asks exactly what Derek Sullivan is. And if I can help send him to prison, I'll consider it the best thing I've done in years. I recorded our conversation, perfectly legal in our state. Another piece of evidence. Another brick in the wall I was building. The next week, I tracked down Derek's second ex-girlfriend. Her name was Margot, and she was harder to find. She'd moved 3 times in 2 years, trying to stay ahead of debt collectors and bad memories. We spoke on the phone. She wouldn't meet in person. I don't talk about Derek, she said. Her voice was tight, controlled. I don't think about Derek. That chapter is closed. I understand, but I'm trying to prevent him from doing this to someone else. It won't work. A bitter laugh. Men like Derek don't get stopped. They just move on to new victims. The system isn't designed to catch them. Maybe, but I'm going to try. Silence on the line. Then, what do you want to know? Margot's story was nearly identical to Vanessa's. The charm, the patience, the slow erosion of her marriage, the divorce, the brief golden period, and then the request for money, escalating until she had nothing left to give. He told me I was special, Margot said quietly. He told me we were going to build a life together. And I believed him, because I wanted to believe him. Because the alternative was admitting I'd destroyed my family for nothing. How much did you lose? $218,000. My house, my retirement, my relationship with my daughters. They haven't spoken to me in 3 years. They blame me for breaking up our family, and they're right to. I wrote down every word. Another witness. Another pattern established. If there's a trial, I said, would you be willing to testify? A long pause. If it means that predator finally faces consequences? Yes, I'll testify. By week 5, I had enough to destroy Rachel's case in court. But I wanted more. I wanted her to understand exactly what she'd done and exactly what she'd lost. I moved my business accounts into new entities, protected structures that my attorney assured me were beyond marital claims, legal and defensible. I put significant funds into retirement accounts, funds that couldn't be touched immediately in a divorce. More barriers between Rachel and the future she'd planned for herself. I paid down our mortgage substantially. Our home equity became the primary shared asset, an asset I could buy out at a discount, and I documented everything. Rachel's hidden spending, the hotel rooms, the restaurants, the gifts. $47,000 over 5 years, all from our joint accounts. All supporting her affair with a con artist. My attorney was impressed. You've done my job for me, Sandra said, reviewing the files. When this goes to court, she won't have a leg to stand on. There's one more thing. I pulled out the life insurance documents. I found out she actually applied for that policy. $2 million on my life. My signature on the application. Except I never signed anything. Sandra went very still. You're saying she forged your signature? The policy was denied. My doctor's records didn't match the physical she submitted. Someone at the insurance company flagged inconsistencies. I spread the papers on her desk. I have the application. I have handwriting samples. And I have proof I was out of state the day she supposedly got my signature notarized. This changes everything. Sandra's voice was careful. This isn't just divorce leverage. This is criminal exposure, fraud, possibly conspiracy, depending on what she discussed with Sullivan. I know. Are you going to pursue it? I thought about the WhatsApp messages, about Derek's jokes about accidents, about Rachel's laughing emoji. That depends on how she handles the divorce. The 6th week brought the opportunity I'd been waiting for. I told Rachel my company was sending me to a cybersecurity conference in Austin. 4 days, Thursday through Sunday. A boring work trip that would keep me away from home. I watched her face when I told her. She maintained perfect composure, concerned about my workload, sorry she couldn't come with me, already making plans for how she'd occupy herself. That night, I monitored the WhatsApp remotely. The messages started within an hour of my announcement. Rachel, he's going to Austin Thursday. We have 4 days. Derek, perfect. Let's look at that apartment. Time to make this real. Rachel, finally. I've been waiting so long. Derek, I know, baby. But it's almost over. Soon it'll just be us. They made plans, apartment viewings, dinners, a whole weekend playing house while I was supposedly out of town. I wasn't going to Austin. Thursday morning at 6 a.m., I kissed Rachel goodbye at the front door. She was still in her robe, sleepy-eyed and affectionate. Have a safe flight, she said. Text me when you land. I will. Miss you already. Miss you too. I drove to the airport, parked in the long-term lot, and walked out the back entrance where Frank was waiting in an unmarked sedan. By 8 a.m., I was in a hotel room 3 miles from my house. Frank was stationed outside our home, camera ready, waiting. By 10 a.m., Derek's Mercedes pulled into my driveway. Frank's photos told the story. Derek walking to the front door with a bouquet of roses. Rachel greeting him in lingerie, in my doorway, in broad daylight, in the home we'd built together. The two of them kissing like the cameras didn't exist, because they didn't know the cameras existed. I sat in my hotel room, looking at those photos on my laptop, feeling nothing at all. Whatever grief I might have felt had calcified into something harder and colder. They left together at noon. Frank followed them to an upscale apartment complex across town, documenting everything. Friday brought more of the same, more photos, more documentation, more evidence for the file that was already overflowing. Rachel and Derek toured apartments. They picked one out, a luxury 2-bedroom with a view of the river. They celebrated with champagne at a restaurant I'd suggested for our anniversary once. Derek put down a deposit. A check that would bounce in 72 hours, though neither of them knew it yet. That afternoon, my journalist contact, Mike McCarthy, who covered financial crimes for the city's biggest newspaper, published his story. Front page, above the fold. Local developer under SEC investigation. Sources. Say fraud, charges imminent. I read it in my hotel room, savoring every word. The SEC had confirmed their investigation. Former investors were going on record. The house of cards was finally catching fire. Derek didn't see it yet. He was too busy playing house with my wife. Saturday morning, Derek's world started to collapse. His phone started ringing at 7 a.m. and didn't stop. Panicked investors, furious business partners, lawyers delivering bad news. I'd set up a burner email account, completely untraceable, and at noon, I sent Rachel a link to the article with a single line. Thought you should know who you're really dealing with. Frank was still watching. He documented the whole thing. Rachel confronted Derek outside a restaurant at 2 p.m., arms waving, voice raised, mascara running. Derek doing what he did best, lying, deflecting, promising everything would be fine. His lawyers were handling it. The accusations were false. His enemies were trying to destroy him. Rachel wanted to believe him. You could see it in her body language, the way she kept reaching for him even as she pulled away. 5 years of investment. 5 years of planning. 5 years of burning her real life for a fantasy. She wasn't ready to admit it was all smoke. They reconciled. Tearful embrace in the parking lot. Frank got photos of that too. That night, Rachel called me in Austin. Her voice was strained, the kind of tight cheerfulness that meant something was very wrong. Hey, handsome, how's the conference? It's good. Boring panels, decent food. You know how these things are. How's everything at home? Fine. A beat too long. Just missing you. Miss you too. I'll be home Sunday evening. Can't wait. I hung up and looked at the photos on my laptop. My wife in lingerie at my front door. My wife kissing another man. My wife sobbing in a parking lot because her con artist boyfriend was about to be indicted. Can't wait. Sunday evening, I came home. Rachel was in the living room when I walked in, looking exhausted, stressed. She'd aged 5 years and 4 days. Welcome back. She hugged me, held on a little too long. How was Austin? Good, productive. I kissed her forehead. You okay? You look tired. Just didn't sleep well. Missed having you here. I made us dinner. We watched television. We went to bed at the same time and she curled up against me like she always did. I stared at the ceiling in the dark, counting the hours until the final phase. The confrontation came on a Wednesday evening, exactly 1 week after I returned from Austin. Rachel was getting ready for her gym session. Yoga pants, sports bra, gym bag packed with clothes she definitely wasn't wearing to exercise. Hey, I said, walking into the bedroom. Can we talk for a minute? She looked up from her bag, instantly wary. Sure, what's up? Come sit down, this is important. We went to the living room. She sat on the couch, tense, while I pulled my laptop from my bag and set it on the coffee table. Nick, you're freaking me out. What's going on? I opened the laptop, pulled up the first email. I found your laptop in the garage, the one you told me was broken. Her face went pale, then gray, then a color I don't have a name for. I don't know what you're... Rachel. My voice was calm. I'd practiced this. Rachel Morgan Life at Gmail. 847 friends on a Facebook account I never knew existed. 5 years of emails with Derek Sullivan. She stopped breathing. I watched it happen, the moment she realized everything was over. I can explain. No. I turned the laptop toward her. You can't. But I can. I can explain how you've been meeting Derek every Saturday for 5 years while telling me you were at book club. I can explain the Wednesday gym sessions that were actually lunch dates. I can explain the business conferences that were weekend getaways with a man who calls you his girlfriend. Nick, please. I can explain how you told him I was probably autistic, that I was terrible in bed, that I was financially controlling. I read from the screen, my voice flat. Nick is emotionally distant. I've tried for years, but he just can't connect. I deserve to be with someone who sees me. Rachel's face crumbled. That was just... I was venting. Everyone complains about their spouse. Not everyone tells their affair partner that their spouse is defective. Not everyone builds a case file against the person they're supposedly married to. I didn't mean any of it. I was just justifying. I know. I flipped to the next document. I found the exit strategy, Rachel. Every asset calculated, every dollar accounted for. You've been planning this for years. That was Derek's idea. He wanted to make sure I'd be okay financially, because he cares so much about financial security. I laughed, and it surprised us both. Let me show you something interesting about your knight in shining armor. I pulled up the SEC article. The investor lawsuits, the fraud allegations. Derek Sullivan is a con man. He's been running a Ponzi scheme for years, and the federal government is about to take him apart. That check he wrote for your apartment deposit? It bounced. His assets are frozen. He's facing federal charges. Rachel stared at the screen, shaking her head. No, you're making this up. I wish I were. I pulled up more documents. Here are the SEC filings. Here are the investor complaints. Here's the FBI warrant application. He told me his lawyers were handling it. He said it was all lies. He lied, just like he lied to Vanessa Cole, and Margot Peterson, and Janet Kimura. All married women just like you. All convinced their husbands were the problem. All left their marriages for Derek. I played the recording of Vanessa Cole. Her voice filled the room, describing the charm offensive, the manipulation, the financial exploitation, the eventual abandonment. I gave him everything, Vanessa's voice said. My marriage, my savings, my self-respect. And when I had nothing left, he disappeared. Rachel listened with her hands over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. There are 3 of them, I said when the recording ended. 3 women who trusted Derek enough to destroy their lives for him. Each one lost between $200,000 and $300,000. Each one ended up alone, broke, and wondering how they'd been so stupid. That's not. I'm different. He loves me. He loves access to what you can provide, or what he thinks you can provide. I opened another document. Did you know his developments are fake? The buildings he claims to be building don't exist. The investor money goes into his pocket. The whole thing is a house of cards, and it's about to collapse. Rachel was crying hard now, makeup running, shoulders shaking. I don't understand. Everything was supposed to work out. We had plans. You had plans. Derek had marks. You were never going to be his wife, Rachel. You were going to be his next victim. I let that sink in. Then I pulled up the final document. The life insurance application. $2 million on my life. My signature on the application. I looked at her. Really looked. Except I never signed anything. You forged it, Rachel. And you applied for a policy that would pay out if I died. All color drained from her face. That's not. I didn't mean. The insurance company rejected it because the medical records didn't match. The signature analysis came back questionable. You almost committed felony fraud, Rachel. You almost committed a crime that would send you to prison. I wasn't going to. I would never actually hurt you. Then why apply for a policy you could only collect if I were dead? She had no answer. The room was silent except for her sobbing. I've documented everything. I have copies of every email, every message, every photo. I have records of the $47,000 you spent on your affair using our joint accounts. I have evidence of the forged signature on the insurance application. I closed the laptop. I've already filed for divorce. At fault. Based on documented adultery and financial misconduct. You can't just. I can. I am. My attorney has everything. Depending on how cooperative you are, I may choose not to press criminal charges for the insurance fraud. Rachel stood up, her grief morphing into fury. You did this on purpose. You set me up. You spied on me for weeks. I documented a crime in progress. There's a difference. You were supposed to love me. You were supposed to fight for me. The hypocrisy was so thick I could taste it. I did love you. For 8 years I loved you. I supported you. I believed you when you said everything was fine. I trusted you when you said you were at book club. My voice stayed level. I fought for a marriage that you'd already left. The only person who didn't fight here was you. That's not fair. Fair? I finally let some heat into my voice. You had an affair for 5 years. You planned to leave me for a con artist. You took $47,000 from our joint accounts to fund your romance. You forged my signature on a life insurance policy. And you're talking to me about fair? She had nothing to say to that. Derek is going to prison, Rachel. His assets are frozen. He can't save you. He was never going to save you. He was using you just like he used Vanessa and all the others. That's not true. He loves me. He's already ghosting you. Check your phone. Betty hasn't responded to your messages in 2 days. She grabbed her phone, scrolled through it. I watched her face fall as she realized I was right. No, there must be some explanation. There is. You stopped being useful the moment his world started falling apart. He doesn't need a girlfriend right now. He needs lawyers and accountants and probably a passport. Rachel sank back onto the couch, all the fight going out of her. What am I supposed to do? Sign the divorce papers. Move on. Build whatever life you can with what's left. I picked up my bag. That's more mercy than you showed me. Nick, wait. Please. We can talk about this. We can go to counseling. I stopped at the door and looked back at my wife. The woman I'd loved for 8 years. The woman who'd been planning my replacement for 5 of them. "You didn't want a husband," I said. "You wanted an exit plan. Congratulations. Here's your exit." I walked out into the night, and I didn't look back. The next 3 months were brutal, but not for me. The legal machinery started grinding immediately. Rachel's first attorney was Thomas Whitney, a slick operator with a corner office in Italian loafers. He came out swinging in our initial hearing, demanding temporary spousal support, accusing me of hiding assets, painting me as the controlling husband Rachel had described in all those messages. Sandra dismantled him in 20 minutes. "Your Honor," she said, her voice calm and precise, "I have here documentation of a 5-year extramarital affair. I have financial records showing Mrs. Lawson withdrew $47,000 from joint accounts to fund this relationship. I have evidence she applied for life insurance on my client using a forged signature. And I have sworn statements from 3 previous victims of the man she was conducting this affair with." Whitney tried to object. The judge, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s named Patricia Hawkins, overruled him without looking up from the documents Sandra had provided. "Furthermore," Sandra continued, "the man Mrs. Lawson was having this affair with is currently under federal indictment for securities fraud. His developments were fraudulent. His assets have been seized. Mrs. Lawson wasn't leaving my client for a better life. She was being conned by a professional predator who targets married women." Judge Hawkins looked at Whitney with something between pity and contempt. "Counselor, were you aware of these facts before filing your motion?" Whitney's expensive shoes shifted on the courtroom floor. "My client assured me." "I'm asking what you knew, not what you were told." "I was aware of the SEC investigation, Your Honor. But my client maintains—" "We'll see what she maintains once the evidence is fully presented." The judge turned back to Sandra. "Motion for temporary support denied. Motion to freeze marital assets denied. We'll reconvene in 30 days for a full hearing." Whitney quit 2 weeks later. His replacement, a younger attorney named David Park, lasted 11 days before he also withdrew from the case. The third attorney was a tired-looking woman who clearly knew a losing battle when she saw one. She convinced Rachel to settle. At-fault divorce. Minimal alimony. 2 years, reduced amount, contingent on Rachel not contesting. I kept the house, which I'd buy out her equity at a significant discount. My business, retirement accounts, and new investments were protected. Rachel got enough to start over. Nothing more. Derek's world collapsed even faster. The SEC filing was just the beginning. Federal prosecutors got involved. Then state attorneys. Then a coordinated task force that resulted in 22 separate charges. Wire fraud, securities fraud, money laundering, making false statements to federal investigators, obstruction of justice. Each charge carried years of potential prison time. His assets were frozen within days of the first indictment. The Mercedes was repossessed on a Tuesday morning. Frank got photos of Derek standing on a downtown sidewalk, watching his car get loaded onto a flatbed truck. The luxury condo went next, then his office, then everything else. He tried to run, made it as far as a budget motel in Nevada, paying cash and using an ID that belonged to someone named Robert Miller. Federal marshals tracked him through cell phone data and credit card receipts. They arrested him at 3 in the morning, dragging him out of a room that cost $60 a night. The photos were all over the news. Derek Sullivan, the handsome real estate developer, being led away in handcuffs wearing a wrinkled t-shirt and 3 days of stubble. The contrast with his promotional photos, custom suits, confident smile, architectural renderings of buildings that would never exist, was striking. Real estate developer. Arrested in multi-million-dollar fraud scheme. I saved every article, every headline, every piece of evidence that showed Derek Sullivan for what he really was. Rachel tried to reach him during those first weeks. I know because Frank was still monitoring her public behavior, observing her at coffee shops with friends, noting statements she made on social media. He won't answer, she told her friend Lisa over lunch at a cafe near her apartment. His phone goes straight to voicemail. His email bounces back. It's like he's vanished. Maybe he's just dealing with the legal stuff, Lisa suggested carefully. It's pretty serious. For 3 weeks? He could send a text. He could let me know he's okay. Rachel's voice cracked. I gave up everything for him, Lisa. My marriage, my reputation, my family, and now he won't even talk to me. Lisa, to her credit, didn't offer false comfort. Maybe you didn't know him as well as you thought. Maybe none of us did? Rachel's face hardened. That's easy for you to say. You're not the one sitting in a one-bedroom apartment wondering how everything fell apart. You're right. I'm not. Lisa's voice was measured. But I'm also not the one who spent 5 years lying to my husband while planning to leave him for someone I clearly didn't understand. They didn't speak again after that. Rachel called me during this period, several times, at all hours. The first call came at 11 at night, a week after the confrontation. Nick, please, I need to talk to you. I made a mistake, a terrible mistake, but he manipulated me. He manipulated you into a 5-year affair? Into forging my signature on an insurance application? Into calculating exactly how much of my money you'd get in a divorce? I wasn't in my right mind. You were in your right mind enough to calculate your share of our assets to the penny. You were in your right mind enough to tell his family we were getting married. You were in your right mind when you laughed about how convenient it would be if I had an accident. Silence on the line. Heavy, thick silence. Sign the papers, Rachel. I hung up. The second call came 3 days later, in the middle of the afternoon. I need to explain. You don't understand what happened. Derek had this way of making everything seem reasonable, justified, right? I kept my voice flat. That's what predators do, Rachel. That's how they work. They make their victims feel like they're the ones making choices. So you admit I was a victim? Of Derek? Probably. Of your own choices? Absolutely. You chose to have an affair. You chose to lie for 5 years. You chose to plan your exit. You chose to forge my signature. Derek might have encouraged you, but you made every single one of those decisions yourself. That's not fair. Stop talking about fair. You lost the right to talk about fair when you started sleeping with another man while I was at home waiting for you. The line went quiet. Then, I'm losing everything, Nick. My friends won't return my calls. My mother won't speak to me. I have nothing. You have exactly what you built for yourself. The third call came at 2 in the morning, a month into the proceedings. She was drunk, crying, barely coherent. I'm sorry, she kept saying. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I didn't know he was lying to me. But you knew you were lying to me. For 5 years. Every single day. I was going to tell you, no, you weren't. You were going to leave. You had the apartment picked out. You had the divorce attorney researched. You were going to disappear into your new life and leave me wondering what happened. That's not, she hiccuped. That's not what, can't we at least talk? Face to face? Please, Nick. I need to explain. There's nothing you can explain that would change anything. The facts are the facts. You betrayed me for 5 years. You planned to leave me for a con artist. You forged my signature on legal documents. Explanations don't change any of that. I still love you. The words hit me like a slap. Not because they hurt, but because they were so transparently false. No, you don't. You never did. You loved an idea. The security I provided, the lifestyle I funded, the platform from which you could launch yourself into something else. That's not love. That's convenience. Please, stop calling me Rachel. Anything you want to say it through your attorney. I hung up and blocked her number. She tried to weaponize our social circle next, painted herself as the victim, a woman driven into the arms of another man by her cold, controlling husband. She worked the narrative hard, calling mutual friends, posting cryptic messages on social media about finally being free from toxicity. But I'd already spoken to the people who mattered. Our mutual friend Jessica was the first to hear the truth. We met for lunch a week after the confrontation, and I laid out the whole story with documentation. "I'm showing you this because you're going to hear Rachel's version," I said, sliding my phone across the table. "I want you to see the evidence first." Jessica looked at the screenshots, the emails, the photos, the financial records. Her face went through shock, then anger, then something like grief. "I had no idea," she finally said. "She told me things were perfect between you two. She said she'd never been happier." "She was happy, just not with me." "Nick, I'm so sorry, I don't know what to say." "Don't be sorry, you couldn't have known." Word spread through our social circle like wildfire after that. The evidence was irrefutable. The 5-year timeline, the meticulous planning, the forged signature, the SEC investigation. Every story Rachel tried to tell collapsed under the weight of documentation. Her best friend from college, Amanda, called me directly 2 weeks later. "I want you to know I believe you," she said without preamble. "I've seen the evidence. What Rachel did was unforgivable." "Thank you. That means something." I don't understand. We've been friends for 20 years. I thought I knew her. We were bridesmaids at each other's weddings." Amanda's voice trembled. "How could she do this to you? To us? To everyone who trusted her?" I've asked myself that question every day. The only answer I've come up with is that some people are very good at pretending, and Rachel was the best I've ever seen. Amanda stopped returning Rachel's calls after that conversation. So did most of their shared friends. The community Rachel had spent years building turned its back on her, one by one. Even her own mother went silent. I called Margaret, Rachel's mother, a month after the confrontation. I'd always gotten along with her. She was a practical woman, raised in practical circumstances with little tolerance for dishonesty. "Nick," she said when she answered, "I've been wondering when you'd call. I wanted you to hear the truth from me, not from Rachel's version of events. I've heard Rachel's version several times. It doesn't make sense." Her voice was tired. "Tell me what really happened." So I told her. Everything. The laptop, the affair, the planning, the insurance application. I sent her the documentation, the same files I'd shown Jessica, the same evidence that was piling up in courtrooms. She was silent for a long time after I finished. "I didn't raise her to be this person," Margaret finally said. Her voice was hollow. "I raised her to be honest, to be loyal, to appreciate what she had. People make their own choices." "Yes, they do." A long breath. "I won't be speaking to Rachel for a while. Maybe for a long while. I need to think about who she really is." "That's between you and her." "It is. But I wanted you to know, whatever happens, I don't blame you. Not for any of this." According to what I heard later, Margaret and Rachel stopped speaking entirely. The last conversation between mother and daughter ended with Margaret saying, "I didn't raise a liar and a schemer. I didn't raise someone who would do this to a good man." They weren't speaking by the time the divorce finalized. Rachel moved away after it was over. Some city 2 states over where nobody knew her name. She got a real job, something in sales from what I heard. First real work she'd done in nearly a decade. I saw her once more at Derek's sentencing hearing. She'd been called to testify, not as a defendant because I'd chosen not to press charges, but as a witness. Someone who could speak to his pattern of manipulation. The federal courthouse was a brutalist concrete structure downtown, all sharp angles and institutional lighting. I sat in the gallery with Frank, watching as witness after witness described the same pattern: charm, manipulation, exploitation, abandonment. Vanessa Cole testified. So did Margot. So did 3 investors who'd lost their life savings. So did an accountant who'd discovered the fraud and been threatened into silence. When Rachel took the stand, she looked older, thinner. The confident woman who'd greeted her boyfriend in lingerie at my front door was gone, replaced by someone smaller and harder, worn down by months of consequences. She described meeting Derek at the networking event, the gradual seduction, the promises of a better life, the slow erosion of her connection to reality. "Did you believe Mr. Sullivan when he told you about his business ventures?" the prosecutor asked. "Yes." Her voice was barely a whisper. "I believed everything he told me." "Did you ever verify his claims independently?" "No. I trusted him." "And what happened when his legal troubles began?" Rachel's composure cracked. "He stopped returning my calls. He stopped responding to my messages. He just disappeared. Like I never existed." She looked out at the gallery. Our eyes met for just a moment. I didn't wave, didn't smile, didn't nod. She looked away first. Derek got 8 years federal prison. Securities fraud, wire fraud, money laundering. The investors filled 3 rows of the courtroom, watching the man who destroyed their financial futures get led away in handcuffs. Vanessa Cole was in the front row, tears streaming down her face. Not sad tears, relieved ones. The man who'd ruined her life was finally facing consequences. When the marshals led Derek out, he looked back at the gallery one last time, looking for someone. Maybe Rachel. Maybe anyone who still believed in him. He found only hostile faces and empty seats. The house sold in the spring. I couldn't live there anymore. Too many ghosts in the walls, too many memories of a life that turned out to be fiction. Every room held something. The kitchen where we'd cooked dinner together, the bedroom where I'd slept next to a woman planning my replacement, the garage where I'd found the truth. The closing was straightforward. A young couple bought the place, newlyweds, bright-eyed and optimistic, holding hands as they signed the paperwork. I wished them well and meant it. The house deserved better memories than the ones I was leaving behind. I bought a condo downtown, 14th floor, floor-to-ceiling windows, a view of the river that changed color with the seasons. New furniture, new neighborhood. New view of a city that suddenly felt full of possibilities instead of reminders. My business took off in an unexpected direction. The skills I developed investigating Rachel and Derek, the pattern recognition, the documentation, the methodical dismantling of carefully constructed lies, turned out to be marketable. I started a consulting arm focused on fraud detection, helping companies and individuals identify the kinds of scams that had almost destroyed Derek's victims. Financial red flags, behavioral patterns. The warning signs that most people miss because they want to believe the best about the people around them. Frank sent me my first referral, a businessman who suspected his partner was skimming. Then another, a woman who thought her financial advisor was cooking the books. Then a steady stream. Word got around. The cybersecurity guy who'd exposed a Ponzi schemer knew how to follow money and find lies. I started running. 3 miles at first, then 5, then 8. The city looked different at 6 in the morning. Quieter, cleaner, full of people starting their days with purpose. I lost 20 pounds without trying. Slept better than I had in years. Woke up feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Like myself. And then there was Lauren. We met at a mutual friend's dinner party. One of those setups where everyone pretends it isn't a setup. She was 35, a veterinarian, divorced 2 years from a husband who'd cheated with his secretary. "Let me guess," she said, when we found ourselves alone on the balcony. "Someone told you I needed to get back out there, And someone told you the same thing, and here we are. I laughed. First real laugh in months. Something like that. Want to compare war stories? Mine's pretty good. He proposed to her before our divorce was even final. They're married now. 2 kids. He sends me Christmas cards. That's impressively terrible, right? She sipped her wine. What about you? So I told her. The short version, at least. The laptop, the investigation, the takedown, the trial. Lauren listened without interrupting. When I finished, she nodded slowly. My ex-husband was one of Derek Sullivan's investors, she said. Lost almost everything. I stared at her. Small world, she added. Smaller than anyone thinks. We went to dinner the next week. And the week after that. And the week after that. Neither of us rushed anything. We'd both been burned too badly for that. But something was building, slow and careful and real. Different from what I'd had with Rachel. Better, maybe. Or maybe just more honest. There's a coffee shop near my condo where I like to work. Good Wi-Fi, better espresso, and windows that look out on the street where real life happens. People walking dogs, couples arguing, kids on bikes, all the messy, beautiful chaos of existence. I was there on a Tuesday afternoon, almost exactly a year after I found the laptop, when my phone buzzed. Lauren. Dinner tonight? I'm cooking. I smiled. Actually smiled without having to think about it. Me. Definitely. What time? Lauren. 7. Bring wine. Me. Done? I put the phone down and looked around the coffee shop. The laptop open in front of me was new. The old one had been evidence, then junk, then something I never wanted to see again. The man using it was new too, in a way. Not better or worse than who I'd been before. Just different. Rachel had wanted me to be the villain in her story. The emotionally distant husband, the controlling monster, the obstacle between her and happiness. Instead, I'd become something else. The man who'd seen through the lie. The man who'd built a case instead of falling apart. The man who'd walked away with his dignity and his future intact. I didn't know what would happen with Lauren. Maybe everything, maybe nothing. The future was unwritten. But I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't the same guy who'd found that laptop in the garage. That guy had been living in a story someone else was writing. This guy was writing his own. I finished my espresso, closed my laptop, and headed home to get ready for dinner. The sun was warm on my face and the city was alive with possibility. Behind me, somewhere in another state, Rachel was living her new life. Working her sales job, maybe dating. Maybe not. I didn't know, and I didn't care. Derek was in a federal prison in Pennsylvania, 8 years from seeing daylight. He'd be 50 when he got out. Broke, broken, and forgotten. And I was here. Alive. Moving forward. The laptop in the garage had shown me who my wife really was. But more importantly, it had shown me who I could be. I'd never be the man in Rachel's story. The pathetic husband, the convenient obstacle, the guy who had accidents. I was the man who'd survived, the man who'd won. And I was just getting started. The last time Rachel tried to contact me was 6 months after the divorce. An email, late at night, full of apologies and explanations and regrets. She wanted me to understand. She wanted me to forgive. She wanted some kind of closure that would let her sleep at night. I read it once, then deleted it without responding. Some stories don't get happy endings. Some betrayals don't get forgiven. Some people don't get the absolution they're looking for. Rachel wanted me to be the bigger person, to release her from the weight of what she'd done. But I wasn't obligated to carry her guilt. I was only obligated to carry myself. There's a moment that stays with me, not from the confrontation, not from the trial, not from any of the dramatic turning points. It was a morning about 3 weeks after I moved into the condo. Early, before the city woke up, when the light was gray and soft and the street below was empty, I was standing at the window with a cup of coffee, watching the sky turn pink at the edges. And I realized I was happy, not triumphant, not vindicated, not satisfied in some revenge fantasy way. Just happy. Quietly, unexpectedly, genuinely happy. Rachel had stolen 5 years of my life. Derek had tried to steal my wife. The two of them together had built a fantasy on the foundation of my destruction. And I was the one standing at a window, watching the sunrise, feeling grateful to be exactly where I was. Some people spend their whole lives chasing happiness in the wrong places. Affairs, schemes, other people's spouses. They think the answer is somewhere else, with someone else, in some other life. But happiness isn't a destination. It's not a person or a place or a plan. It's a Tuesday morning with good coffee and a sunrise and nowhere to be except right here. I finished my coffee and started my day. The past was behind me. The future was waiting. And I was ready.